welcome to a special live World of Good podcast. My name is Michaela Urban, and I'm here with Zach and Audrey Langford. And we are in Birkenhead, England, at Egan Church of God. So, Zach and Audrey, thanks for joining us, first of all, and for welcoming me and some of our friends just to come and experience what God is doing through this place. Excited to be here. And I hope you all are excited to learn more about how God is working in and through Egan. If you guys just want to share a little bit about who you are, maybe a little about your family, and then just an overview of Birkenhead.
So we're Zach and Audrey, and we have been serving and living in England for approximately 14 years. We came over in 2010 and stayed until the COVID epidemic, and we had to go home during that time. So we've been back now for a couple of years. We have two kids, Lola and Leo, who are just incredible. But yeah, we're just here in Birkenhead, serving with the church, Egan Road Church.
Yeah, Egan Road Church has been here in some capacity since 1970, and then in 1932 it found its home here on Egan Road, and has been serving its community since. There are three previous pastors. The original pastor is from Ireland, who planted the church, followed by his son, and then a local congregant came up through the church and became the pastor. And then in 2017, when the church was at a huge transition, they asked us to step in. We had been serving for some time as associates, and we were already placed here with Global Strategy, working with youth and kids, and the church voted unanimously to put us in a position of missionary pastors. And so we've been working really hard since then to help the church transition and to reach its community, which is very secular.
While we're talking to some of the global strategy missionaries all around the world, one thing that we often hear about is both the challenges and the opportunities that come with any type of cross-cultural ministry. I wonder if you guys would share a little bit about what types of both challenges and opportunities that you experience here in Birkenhead.
I think challenge-wise, I mean, with any person who works internationally or away from home, doesn't have to be like internationally, is any type of support network that you have built around you in those places where you're from. And so for a long time, for many years, we kind of just plodded along, as they'd say here. We just moved through life without that kind of nice, comfort zone that those people around us to support us. And so that's always a difficult place to be, especially when you're, in a new culture, in a new place, trying to do what you feel God calling you to do, and just not having peers and people that you can fall back on and put your trust in. So it's really good that we have a team of other missionaries that we're in constant contact with, and we're doing things together through the year. That's been it's been a blessing over the years. Challenge-wise, although we speak the same language in theory, there's a lot of words lost in translation, quite a bit. So we have to kind of constantly watch ourselves, well, at least I do, what I'm saying, because it doesn't necessarily translate appropriately and in the right way. But yeah, there are these subtle cultural differences that, like for me being from the South, well, we're both kind of from the South in Alabama, there are some indeed cultural differences there than here. One of those being, we grew up in the Bible Belt. Like every other person we knew went to a church, or their parents went to a church, or they had, 17 Bibles in their house. And, there was some type of connection to faith or God in some way. And then here, it's just not kicks. You go to, if you do participate in any type of thing within a church, it's out of habit, or it's out of a sense of duty. It's just part of the culture. We'll go to a wedding, a funeral, or a christening. You might identify as a Catholic or an Anglican or something like that, but not necessarily be practicing or even have a belief in that. So that can be a bit challenging, but it's also created a lot of opportunities for us. to begin to express and try to find different expressions and new, fresh expressions of our faith that people can connect to, that people can resonate with. Our background, we don't realize sometimes that so much of our backstory, so much of our life, like growing up perhaps, or maybe before I was a Christian, the home dynamic that I had, maybe if it was good, maybe it wasn't good. So how much of our story really can help us interact with people. So that's something like a great opportunity that we've seen over the years.
Yeah, I'd add to that with opportunities and just the story of our lives. We found that as we're engaging with people, vulnerability is actually huge. It's an opportunity. Church can't just be a service that we attend and go back out into the world here, because that has no value for people who aren't leaders. It has great value to us, but as we're connecting with people in relationships, we're trying to make sure that the gospel is good news for everyone. And in order for the gospel to be good news for everyone, they have to hear it. So how do we create opportunities for people to hear the gospel? And a lot of times it's not happening in the Sunday service here. It's happening in the relationships that we build in groups and programs that we run in the church that develop slowly and over time. And one of the conversations we had early on is, when I think about my story with God and my faith story, I think of two very distinct people in my life that I asked hard questions to, that walked alongside me when I was difficult, and that brought me to those steps in which, the Holy Spirit spoke to me, and I followed Jesus because of them, right? Because of that relationship. I don't have a story, unfortunately, I guess, for those that are leading churches that came from the sermon. That's not what impacted me, but it was the people that impacted me. And when Zach shared his story, it's the same people have impacted. So we have this unique opportunity to engage people. And I think everyone has the same opportunity to engage people where they are, and share the good news through our lives, through living and walking alongside them. And so we do that regularly through groups and programs here at Egan Church that just create that first step, that first initial opportunity to let the walls down and get to know someone just for who they are. And then we walk alongside people and see where the Lord takes them in that journey.
So good.
And just having like a small glimpse of some of the things that are taking place here at Egan Church of God, I can certainly testify to the fact that you're practicing incarnational ministry amongst this community, amongst this neighborhood. This building is getting used for all sorts of things throughout the week. It's not just a come in and go out on a Sunday morning. Can you all share a little bit about what ministry is looking like in this context, in this place, and through this church, and to build that to the community that we're speaking to?
We have all kinds of programs in our week. So the longest standing programs are our youth club and our kids club, and those happen on Tuesday and Thursday in the week. And it is a opportunity for kids to come in. We play games and group games. Then we take some time and do a Bible story and lesson. We feed kids, we feed teenagers. And it's just an opportunity for them to connect with the church, have a safe space to be in this community. There's not a whole lot of kids and youth after school program in our area. We're in a quite deprived area. And so they don't always have a place to go. And the houses that we live in an area that's primarily row houses. You don't really go bring 10 of your friends over to your house. We just don't have the space. And so this church offers a space and a unique opportunity for people to come together and find community. And we want to foster that. So those have been going on for decades. We're actually the only church in our neighborhood that offers a youth and kids program. And so that's a wild legacy for us to have, that we've been doing that for decades. More recently, we started a TOTS program, which is a mom or a parent or grandparent and under fives program. The adult and the child stay for a play session. And they just come, spend an hour and a half, play, have some coffee, and then people at the church come alongside and are really intentional at engaging with and talking with families as they're here to play in a safe place again. Finally, we added a sensory section. We found that there was a need in our community where kids were kind of falling through the cracks. They lived in our neighborhoods, but they didn't quite fit into the programming we already had. And some of those things are sensory and neurodivergence and autism or nonverbal. And so these children have challenges that make them need a safe, quiet space. And so we've created that quiet space in the sensory session on Monday. So those things are happening throughout the week. And we're just trying to meet people where they are in their life and engage with them there. We also continue to have our church service on a Sunday.
Yeah, with our groups, there's still a great skepticism when it comes to participating in these types of sessions, because there's a fear of being referred to social services for this, that, the other. And what we're just trying to simply provide and let people know is that, we're not bothered by all that. We just want you to have a time where you can come be with your kids, connect with other parents, other carers, and just have a nice time together. We're not worried about, much about your circumstance. If you want to talk about it, great. But yeah, we just want to provide that time and that space for them. But one thing that we've been looking at in this season of ministry is really, what does the institutional church look like for worship? And how that translates into the context and the culture that we are currently living in. And, at the end of the day, the quick answer is it doesn't translate. It doesn't connect. Many people that we know, young people, people with all ages really, that we know, find that connecting to what we would say is the institutional church or the traditional church model, it just doesn't gel with them and where they're at. Not necessarily maybe the message of Jesus is impactful and important, but all the little avenues that we use, all the little things, the conduits that we use to connect them to the message of Jesus, there's a blockage. And so we've been looking at ways to mitigate that, to look at ways to, not diminish the gospel message, but how do we find new avenues and new conduits to produce that to them? Mm-hmm. So we're looking at ways to meet. And one of the important things that Audrey and I have done over the years, and where we've seen the most impact, is really having people in our home, eating dinner together, eating food together. It's through those intentional connections and relationships where we're able to really get to know each other, and I'm not even necessarily trying to become your friend so I can bring you to Jesus. I just want to get to know you because I like who you are, right? I'm interested in who you are. And if that relationship blooms or develops into something more intentionally about Jesus, we're here for that. But we want to meet people where they are, provide them space to be who they are. We've been kind of using this term, we say relentless acceptance, relentless grace. We're all from different backgrounds. We all have different stories, but we're all here right now, presently. Wherever we came from, we're here now. So let's be here and now. Whatever you're going through, whatever it is you believe, I'm not bothered with that. Let's just meet around the table. Let's eat some good food together. Let's have a good conversation and see where we end up.
But I think the beautiful thing about that has been consistently, we want our structures to work. We want our programs to work, right? We do want to share the gospel. That's always part of what we're doing. And yet the moments that have been the most powerful in this context have been inviting people over because we're all starving after shopping, and making fajitas in my kitchen, and then having a completely different conversation like that. I'm thinking distinctly of this story. Two of my very favorite humans, and if they watch this, they'll know who they are, were at Ling House. They were having this whole dialogue about spirituality, because neither of them at this point in their lives would call themselves Christians. And I think it's hysterical that they're friends with a pastor and a pastor's wife, right? And they're at my house, we've been shopping, we're cooking fajitas, and they're talking about spirituality, and I'm not engaged in the conversation because I'm cooking. And I hear, have you ever been to a medium? Have you ever experienced this? Which, by the way, in Europe, that's actually really common. Spirituality is actually quite accepted. Religion is not. And so you'll see things about crystals or witchcraft or all these spiritual things that are true spiritual seeking.
Astrology.
All these kinds of things that people are very bought into. And so they're having this conversation. This is a conversation I've heard or been a part of many, many times before. And they shout me, hey, what's your favorite thing about Jesus? And what? Yeah. What? I'm picking fajitas at this moment. And so, it was a moment where I shared the story of the woman at the well and Jesus' upside down gospel, right? It's this idea that even the church people were getting it wrong, right? We were worried about the rules and the regulations and the looking the part of the church. And yet he still offers living water to her. She's a woman, she's a Samaritan, like all the things are against her, right? And so I just love that story because Jesus doesn't do what we as humans expect. And I think that's beautiful. And I think the more you learn about Jesus, the more you realize he's not who you expect. And they were like, really? And so that has started dialogue with them. And one of the two of them would say she's a Christian now. And it's just those moments. Those aren't happening on a Sunday service, but they're happening in the week. They're happening in those relational moments. And it's because we've built trust and friendship. And we've spent the time to know them as they are in the life that they're living, whatever that looks like, good or not, and really just engaging. And so I think that's powerful. And I think that we're really looking at the church as a structure. And in our community, the structure is a barrier to the gospel for those people. And so how do we break that barrier down?
Yeah. How do we feel like almost a free-flowing entity? Like the Spirit is, like we're able to be church anywhere as we go, where we are, this through relationship, through connection, not just the structures that we have.
Right.
It's more than that. It's bigger than that.
Yeah. Translating the gospel into this context. So the words I heard you guys using are, it takes trust, it takes friendship, it takes time. You're putting that time in. And so as you spend time in this community and been part of this cross-cultural work for a season now, are there any insights or skills or just little, nuggets that you would like to share with anyone that might be listening to this podcast or watching it? Just, anything that you would want to share about cross-cultural ministry in general to those that are maybe just dipping their toes in the water.
Don't do it. Just joking. Find somebody that you can be vulnerable with. So one of the important things, impactful things in my life, when I felt a desire, felt this sense of what we call calling, right? To work internationally, to be somewhere else where God was moving, was I had a pastor who was able to sit down with me and not just question it, but challenge me in it. Sure. Well, what does it mean? What are you feeling? And eventually, how are you going to do it? Where's God taking you in this journey? Find somebody who's able to help you articulate that calling, help you articulate what that desire is in your heart. And I think that was impactful for me and early on in my career, just having somebody there to walk with me and to not let me just sit in it, but to actually maybe move into it and act on it.
And be a learner. I think we referenced it a little bit about the language. There's a lot of assumptions between even the UK and the US. We think, we're similar, we speak the same language. It's going to be easy because I can communicate with them, or I can read the food packaging while I'm shopping, so I don't have that stress. You think that it's going to...
That's a big thing. That's very helpful. That's very helpful.
It's huge. Other missionaries do not have that. Shopping is even stressful, especially in those early days. But, there's an assumption that it's going to be an easy connect. You should easily be able to connect with your neighbor. You should easily, because you have all these things in common. Mm-hmm. But if you go in there and you any cross-cultural ministry, you're going to hit a place in which you're like, this is hard. And if you're not a learner in that moment, you might be in it. Yeah. If you're not a learner in that moment, you might push your agenda into the moment. And so you need to stop and slow down and really think, like, what does this person, what does this people group, what does this community have to offer me? And what can I learn from this? What part of my identity is rubbing here? And is it essential? And so I think those moments are really key to longevity in a ministry and to being able to really engage as, and I think we're all called to be missionaries, even if you're staying at home, and like, even if you're reaching your neighbor, maybe there's a moment in which there's a rub there, or you don't identify exactly with each other. Like, those are not moments to push necessarily, or oftentimes to listen. And so I think I've learned the most when I've listened.
Well, the title of this podcast is Over Good. And I just thought, how are either of you or both of you seeing God at work for the good here in Birkenhead, England, and here through Egan and Church of God?
I think, no, go ahead. No, stay.
No, go for it.
I think it's in small ways God is moving. And it's taken me a long time to see them in the small ways, see God in the small ways, to see the Spirit moving in the small ways. Because there was a time where it seemed like there were big movements of things and there was big momentum. And if you're not careful, you get hung up on that feeling, that experience. But when there doesn't seem to be any momentum, are you able to identify that God is present? So I'm learning that more and more, identifying God in the small things. I think God is moving in the small conversations when an individual, like a friend of ours who is not a believer, gets upset when somebody says they're not going to come to our tots group because it's in a church, even though he doesn't believe it, but he believes in connecting with people. I think God's moving in that. I think that's a movement of God, movement of the Spirit. So it's in those little ways like that, where people that we know, people that we deeply care for, who aren't Christians or whatnot, who are like advocating for the church, who are advocating for God, really, even though they wouldn't articulate it that way, but they are. So that's been really important for me to see, especially in this season of ministry.
We were given a couple of grants to start that sensory session that we referenced earlier. And as a part of that, because we got funding from donors, we had to do a report back. And I texted the moms that are participating. I was like, hey, can you give me a quote about what this has meant to you? And it's not something that we actually directly ask people, and maybe we should. I think it would help if we asked people. If you can, give me a couple of sentences. And one of the moms wrote back, my kid had no community, but they do now. Wow. And I said, we have no gospel moment in that, not in the words, right? But we do in our actions. And so that kid was struggling in every group he tried. He'd been kicked out because of behavior or whatever. But she had found community. And to me, like, that's the gospel, isn't it? It's loving your neighbor as yourself. And that's my neighbor. And so we're doing it. And so for me to hear those reminders, and she used those words, it was not, there's no prompting, there's no discussion about what our ethos is or what is our motto. It was just that was a quick text back from her. And I was just like, it took no time for her to articulate the way that, God is using a program to really impact a family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great, when we do recognize and get to celebrate, the slow and simple ways that we can see the kingdom come. I know I definitely see that here in this place and in through your lives. Thank you both for taking the time to share with me, with our listeners and viewers online. Yeah, you guys are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to A World of Good. A World of Good is a podcast production of Global Strategy and Church of God Ministries. Our theme song is Colorado by Leo Flores. If you want to join the conversation, visit us at Twitter at A World of Good Pod, on Instagram, A World of Good Podcast, or visit our website, chogglobal.org/A World of Good. And join us next time as we share more stories of good from around the world.